On today's show, we are joined with the Godfather of Franchising, a man who has helped more than 10,000 people out there just like you to create both time and financial freedom as a result of helping place them up, match them up, coach them up to find the right franchise of choice. So if you're out there thinking about buying a franchise, you're thinking about becoming self-employed, you want to listen to today's show and today's interview with Terry Boom Boom Powell, the Godfather of Franchising.
Some shows don't need a celebrity narrator to introduce the show, but this show does. 2 men, 8 kids, co-created by 2 different women, 13 multi-million-dollar businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Thrivetime Show.
Now, 3, 2, 1, here we go!
Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, and we'll show you how to get.
All right, Thrive Nation. On today's show, we're interviewing the Godfather of Franchising.
Sneaks, you want me to put the horse head in the trunk or what? It's getting messy. It's gross. It's weird.
How many times have we had this conversation? Don't ever bring up where to store the decapitated horse heads while I'm doing a Thrivetime show read. This is a very important show. So I was saying before I was rudely interrupted, he shares why you don't need to love what you're doing to become a successful franchisee. Throughout the past 35 years, Terry Boom Boom Powell has been helping thousands of people just like you to find the right franchise opportunity for the family, for your family, for my family.
Terry Boom Boom Powell, how are you, sir?
Hey, Clark. How you doing, buddy?
Brother, I'm excited to have you on the show because I don't know if this is a fact we could prove or a claim that I'm just making, but I think you have probably helped more families and more people to become self-employed with a franchise than maybe anybody else in the world. Am I off, or are you in the top 10 there?
Oh, no, we're right at the very top. We were the very, very first organization to move into what's called the referral network type of group back in the early 80s. We were the first and still the foremost in that group, and we've introduced more individuals to be self-sufficient by using a franchise as a business model to, build income, lifestyle, wealth, and equity for themselves and their family. So we're real proud of that.
Terry, for the listeners out there that are not super familiar with your background like I am, could you share with us how you first got introduced to the world of franchising?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've kind of been a serial entrepreneur all my life, and I've been following lots of things entrepreneurial and got tied into looking into franchising and following it through Entrepreneur Media and Entrepreneur Magazine back in the early days, back in the 80s. And then I was going through a transition of business ownership and decided to partner up with a gentleman here in Southbury, Connecticut, and we launched a multi-office business and franchise brokerage firm. And we had about 15 brokers working with us back in the early 80s. And we were really working on selling resale businesses and brokering franchise businesses that were for sale or for resale. And that's how I got introduced to that whole idea of putting people together with businesses. Unfortunately for me, it wasn't something that worked out well from a value proposition because I just didn't feel like in the broker arena where we were really representing the best interest of the individuals who were looking. It was really just about getting them, connected with businesses we had listings with in the hopes of selling them that so we could get a commission and add that to our sale price.
Got it.
That's how I got started.
So you got started, 35 years ago? Is that right?
I started the company, The Entrepreneur Source, 35 years ago this January, and discovered it about 37 years ago as a byproduct of moving away from that brokerage arena where we were qualifying people out more than anything. So people would call about interested in businesses and franchises. We give the brokers 3 minutes or less to qualify them in or out. And if they didn't do it in 3 minutes, they got penalized and lost their next rotation up. So they got pretty serious about that. So we basically were pushing away 95% of the people that called as not being ready, willing, and able. And I really got enamored by what was going on by these people that kept calling back and asking about new businesses and franchises, even though we had pushed them away and told them to come back and see us when you're serious and you know how much money you have to spend and you're ready to do it pretty quickly. So I really got intrigued by that. I became very interested in learning more of what was going on over there by that, the non-ready, willing, able 95% that we pushed away. And so I told my partner, Ron, that I was going to be leaving the venture we were in, selling my partnership back to him, and wanted to spend the next 6 months talking to as many of those people we pushed away as possible to really find out what their why was. And of course, he laughed at me and said, "Why would you want to spend your time with those tire kickers?" And then he added another word, and he said, "and dreamers." And when he said that, I knew that I was onto something, because I always considered myself as a dreamer, and I really admired people that were dreamers and always looking to be, taking control of their destiny.
Could you describe for our listeners out there, many of which who want to become self-employed? Forbes says now that 67% of the American population wants to become self-employed. Could you explain to the listeners out there what you do, kind of on a third grade level, so that I can track with you? What exactly do you do?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. You talk about people wanting to be self-employed, and we know that about 75% of the adult population has a strong to very strong desire to be self-sufficient. And I call it the entrepreneurial itch. They want to take control of their destiny. But actually, in our experience of 34 plus years, is most of those people are scared to death about being self-employed because they fear what it'll take to get to that self-employment, and they think that there's a lot of failure that comes from that. So what we've learned is that a very, very large number of people want to be in control of their destiny and be self-sufficient. And our role as a coaching organization is to help them understand how to transition that through education, awareness, and discovery. That allows them to see how to use a business as a vehicle to accomplish their income, lifestyle, wealth, and equity goals instead of buying themselves a job, which is the challenge with people that get excited about, going into business, is they frequently go about picking a business the same way they think about what their next job might be.
Terry, you said that you help people, and I took note here, to help people to achieve their income, lifestyle, and equity goals. Am I correct there?
Income, lifestyle, wealth, and equity.
Okay,
in that order.
Income, lifestyle, wealth, and equity. And I've heard you talk about this quite a bit at great length. I've seen videos you've been on. I've actually seen you present at conferences, that kind of thing. But for our listeners who are not familiar with what you mean by that, how do you help people achieve their income, lifestyle, wealth, and equity goals?
Yeah, it's really rather simple. It's a paradigm shift from what most people look at when they think about going into business. And they look at replacing their income as they were employed. And they end up sometimes choosing the wrong decision or the wrong direction because they really want to have a role in that business as they did in the job. And rather than using the business as a vehicle and helping them understand that the dream of being self-sufficient, the business isn't the dream. It's just a vehicle to accomplish income, lifestyle, wealth, and equity so you and your family can live the dream of ownership.
Got it.
Many, many years ago in our coaching tens of thousands of people, we realized that really no one wants to buy a business or a franchise or be sold one. They just want to own the outcome of that, which is the income, lifestyle, wealth, and equity.
Okay, as an example, I have a friend of mine who's very successful, who's one of the top franchisees in a franchise some people might have heard of called Domino's. And this just in, he does not eat pizza. Now, true story. I've met the guy. We've talked quite a bit. I met him at a conference. We got to be friends about a year and a half ago. He does not eat pizza. I said, hey, you work, Domino's? I'm just asking, just small talking. I'm just joking with him. Hey, what's your favorite kind of pizza? And he goes, honestly, I totally avoid carbs right now. So I do not eat pizza. I sometimes eat the pepperoni, but I don't eat pizza. I think it's a good pizza, but if I eat pizza, I'll eat it, but I typically don't eat pizza. I think a lot of people feel like they have to be a pizza fanatic to buy a Domino's. Right. Or they have to love carpets to buy an OxyFresh, or they have to be...
Wow.
Can you break that down for someone out there who maybe has misinformation in that regard?
Yeah, it's interesting about franchising. Most people have followed the myth of go do what you know, love, and enjoy, and success will follow. And actually, the reality is in franchising, franchisors don't really want the technicians in the business.
Oh,
so they don't want people with the background in that business or necessarily a love of the product or service. They want you to be able to manage, market, and promote a successful business venture. So the idea that you need to love and enjoy what you're doing or have a desire to be in the pizza business really has no bearing on using the business as a vehicle to income, lifestyle, wealth, and equity. In fact, if you were a baker, Dunkin' Donuts wouldn't consider you. If you were an auto mechanic, Amco Transmission's not going to want you as a franchisee because you'll become a technician. You'll be out in the garage.
Okay, this is big. You just said that if I was passionate about baking, who wouldn't want me? If I've been baking donuts, you're saying Dunkin' Donuts wouldn't want me?
Dunkin' Donuts wants you because you want to be in the back baking the donuts. And that's not what the owner's role is. And that's a big paradigm shift because most non-franchise businesses, the owner is really the technician. And that's one of the reasons why non-franchise businesses don't have as high of success level as franchise businesses. In fact, franchise businesses have the highest level of success with the least experienced, knowledgeable background types of individuals as owners of any business in our society and have the lowest failure rate. Just the opposite of what all the books that talk about go do what you know, love, and enjoy, and success will follow. Hasn't really proven out for non-franchise businesses because they have a very high failure rate, as high as 50%.
That right there, Terry, that right there is probably enough of a knowledge bomb right there for someone to marinate on for the next several hours. Because I think some people feel like you have to go out there and do what you love and enjoy. And I'll give you an example. There is a person very close to me in my life who they went to college, Terry, and they have a skill in the world of coding. They're very good at coding computers, that kind of thing. And they get paid about $75,000 to $100,000 a year, depending upon where they're at. I've heard them jump to different jobs. I think they're closer to $100,000 a year. And they work all the time, 24/7 tech support. And he was asking me about buying an OxyFresh franchise, And he's like, dude, I know you talk about it on your podcast, but really, I mean, for $52,000, can somebody really create time freedom and financial freedom? Could somebody actually build wealth, equity? Is this possible? And I said, yeah, it totally is possible. They go, but I don't know anything about carpets. And I always hear that part, but I don't know anything about carpets. So for somebody out there specifically who's thinking about buying an OxyFresh carpet cleaning franchise, which you guys have helped many seekers to be placed with that franchise, what kind of person is ideal to buy an OxyFresh franchise?
Well, that's a great question. It's really not a matter as to what type of person is ideal to invest in an OxyFresh franchise.
Okay.
It's about helping them understand how many other individuals who are successful owners of OxyFresh, who came from all types of backgrounds and experience, have just simply used it as a vehicle to grow their income, lifestyle, wealth, and equity. So it's really moving away from connecting yourself and the type of individual that should own a particular caliber or quality or sector of franchising, like carpet cleaning. But, it's kind of moving away from that mindset is how you really empower yourself around income, lifestyle, wealth, and equity, and start looking at the business as only the vehicle, and then looking at business models that have a successful track record, who have unbelievable execution by their team members to launch and support and train franchisees to continually grow and succeed and increase the return on that investment. That's what you want to look for in a franchise operation, whether they're doing carpets or candy machines. It doesn't matter as long as you take a look at that organization and make sure it's a fit culturally for you. That's the big part.
Terry, you are kind of like the Godfather of franchising, so I feel like maybe if I'm going to confess to somebody about being a technician, maybe I should confess to you. Back in the day, my company I built, DJConnection.com, long before I met you, was the largest wedding entertainment company in the country. DJConnection.com. It's still around today. I mean, before I sold it, we were doing 4,000 weddings a year. But Terry, do you want to guess how many weddings a year that I personally wanted to DJ?
Probably all of them.
I'm not kidding. The last year before I sold it, I personally did over 200 events because I loved it. Like, I was all about it. And I always, every time a lead would come in, they're like, oh, this one's at the Skirvin Hotel in beautiful Oklahoma City. And I'm like, oh, I haven't been there before. Or it would come in, a cruise ship would ask, they're looking for a DJ to go on a 7-day cruise. And I'm going, oh, let me do it. Let me do it. And so I was a technician, and I don't feel the same type of pull with any other business that I'm now involved in. So now I have the financial freedom and the time freedom, but I was so in love with the art. I know it sounds weird to probably everybody out there who's an adult. They're going, really? You wanted to DJ as a living? I was so addicted to the technician aspect of the business that I could not pull myself away from it. Can you speak to somebody out there who's bought into that lie that your income has to come from your passion, that your profits have to come from your passion?
I think the best way to help people understand it, because this question comes up a lot and we've coached lots of people through it, is to think of it from a perspective of franchising in general in the U.S. economy. Franchise outlets represent about 20% of all the outlets out there in all businesses, but yet they account for almost 50% of all the dollar volume. So think about that. 20% of the businesses are doing almost 50% of the dollar volume. The other 80% of the businesses out there are only sharing in the other 50%. So just think about what the typical franchise outlet does in volume compared to a non-franchise outlet. It's anywhere from 6 to 8 times more business.
And I want to give an example to this. There is somebody who I knew very, very well. They had a business, Terry, downtown in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This is probably close to a decade ago. And they wanted to make they wanted to basically become the best local sandwich shop in Tulsa. And they were located, for the people who know Tulsa, there's 5th and Boston. And at 5th and Boston, there's a Schlotzsky's right there. And there was, at the time, a Subway. Now there's a Jimmy John's. And let me tell you what happened to this woman. She got destroyed by all the brands. Because while she was thinking about her logo and what to charge and what should be included and the sandwiches and how to market and what her website should be like and what kind of space she should find and what systems she should do and how to make a checklist. Her competition was just serving sandwiches at a profit. Can you speak to just how much time you save when you buy a franchise as opposed to trying to reinvent the wheel yourself?
Yeah, well, just the fact that 20% of the outlets are doing 50% of the volume gives you a sense of the aspect of what a franchise model can create for you without having any background or experience or knowledge. But take into consideration the aspect of, what's involved in being a business owner and the things that you want to do to make that happen. Lots of people make the mistake of thinking that franchise businesses are different. But remember, every franchise business out there, including my company, which is a franchise now, had to be started by some crazy entrepreneur that was willing to build that into something that can be replicatable and duplicatable. So all successful franchise companies today were all started as an individual, privately launched business that was one of those ones that succeeded and decided to grow and expand using franchising as a business model. Because that's the only difference, is franchising is a different form of expanding a business than what other businesses do. And it's just been proven to be one of the most successful formats of business ownership in our society. And people are using it to be able to replicate and duplicate success over and over. But it all started with some entrepreneur that had an idea that decided to franchise. And that lady with her sandwich shop could have been one of those. Unfortunately, she was consumed by the market that was already generated and already successful in the franchise world.
I was unfortunate. I remember meeting this lady, and she was such a nice person, but she was just getting every day. I mean, you got Jimmy John's just opened, Subway's right next to you, Schlotzsky's there, and they all have lines wrapped around the door. Meanwhile, she's trying to figure out what kind of sandwiches to make. And if you're out there and you just feel overwhelmed, you want to be self-employed, but you don't want to reinvent the wheel. All you want is time freedom and financial freedom. Terry, that's essentially what you guys do as a franchise coach. But one of the things you have to do, and that franchises have to do, because franchising has now evolved quite a bit, is you have to, as a franchisor, you have to provide somebody who wants to buy a franchise, a potential franchisee, with what is called a franchise disclosure document. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that if I want to buy a franchise, the franchisor, the company that I want to buy from, they have to give me the franchise disclosure document, and I have to have it in my possession for, I believe, 13 days to review before I'm even allowed to purchase. Is that correct? Or educate the listeners out there about the franchise disclosure document.
Yeah, absolutely. Franchising is the most safe investment you can make because the Federal Trade Commission has regulated for many, many years. In fact, it's more regulated than Securities and Exchange regulates the offering of stocks and bonds. So they require every franchisor, in order to be able to offer their business, to meet the standard requirements of providing this very large franchise disclosure document that really covers every element that anyone would ever need to know about making an evaluation and comparing and contrasting franchisors. And then franchisors have to also go out and hire auditors to audit their financials and provide 3 years of audited financial statements for you before you can be considered as a franchisee. So we give that offering franchise disclosure document to everyone who's seemingly interested once we've gotten to a point in that discovery process where we as a franchisor believe we want to offer them to become a franchisee. Because most franchisors are awarding licenses to people, not selling franchises to people. So they want to make sure it's a good fit before they provide that franchise disclosure document. And then they have a minimum of 2 weeks to have that document and review that document before they can enter into or invest in a franchise. And most times it takes considerably longer to get from that FDD through that process and be awarded a franchise.
And if you, we'll put it on the show notes. Our show observer, Andrew, will put this on the show notes. But the franchise disclosure document, it's regulated by the Federal Trade Commission, and there are 23 items that you're going to find in that document. You're going to find their business experience, any litigation that's going on, whether some of the founders have had bankruptcy in the past, initial fees. You're going to find about other fees, estimated initial investment, restrictions of sources of products, the franchisee's obligations, financing, the territories, the advertising, the trademarks, the copyrights. It's a lot there. I mean, we'll put it on the show notes so you can find all 23 of those items. But I want to ask you, if I'm out there listening, and let's say I'm interested in buying a franchise. I want to create time freedom and financial freedom, and I only have $75,000 available. Can I get involved in franchising? Is that possible?
Oh, absolutely. There are many, many, many franchises today that are in that range. You mentioned OxyFresh, and our franchise, the Entrepreneur Source, is well under that $75,000 investment range. So today there are many, many opportunities that are under $100,000, and some as low as $45,000, $55,000, $65,000 that allow you to have a very successful business model. And that includes enough operating capital to get the thing off the ground to the point where it's starting to generate positive cash flow for you, which is really the key. So not all franchises are super expensive. Now you can invest, many, many millions of dollars into a franchise.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily the norm for the majority of people that we're working with, because most of those franchises are already very successful household words, and they're not actually awarding licenses to new franchisees anymore. If they're going to grow their brand and they've got 500 successful franchisees out there, they're not going to take Terry Powell on as a new owner to see how he works out. They're going to work with those existing owners to have multiple units, which is 52% of all franchises out there are owned by multi-unit operators.
I want to tee this up here just to give some proof of concept of what Terry's saying, because Terry, you do this every single day, and I'll put this on the show notes so anybody listening out there, you can verify that what Terry's saying is in fact true, and then we'll put the requirements on the show notes as well, Andrew. That way everybody can see this. But if you wanted to buy a Floyd's barbershop right now, Floyd's is a very successful barbershop chain. You can find them in Denver, Colorado. Full disclosure, I own the Elephant in the Room franchise, which we're franchising. But just as an example, if you wanted to buy a Floyd's right now, they're saying that you have to have a net worth of $5.4 million or more and $2 million or greater of securities and cash, not including retirement accounts. And you have to have 5 years of experience as a multi-unit management experience in related industries. Why would they be so stringent and so specific and have such high standards over there at Floyd's or some of these big companies?
Well, because the game for retail organizations like that, Floyd's is a retail service organization doing haircuts. They're really looking to replicate and duplicate that model with very successful, proven track record types of operators that have done other types of multi-unit development and franchise growth. And it's a matter of being very selective in that awards process. And they've come up with a criteria that they're successful with, that they're making sure that the future of their brand is going to be protected by carefully selecting and awarding licenses to only those individuals that meet those qualifications. That's an awards process.
So, Terry, if I'm out there today and I'm saying, okay, I am interested in potentially buying a franchise, but I don't know where to start. What is is first step you'd recommend our listeners take? And it doesn't matter how self-serving it may be. Should they call you? Should they email you? Should they go to a different site? Should they read a certain book? What do you recommend as the first step?
Well, there's a great book out there called Your Career 2.0, The Survival Guide of the Battered Career and Battered Investor Syndrome. That's written by our entrepreneur source coaches. And that's a great resource you can pick up on Amazon. That'll give you a lot of insight on how to look at getting into franchising and making sure you're taking it from a standpoint of it's a growth situation. That's why we call it Career 2.0. We actually help our clients move from Career 1.0 version, and something that they had a lot of experience in but didn't work out for them in other ways, and wanting to shift to the 2.0 version where they take control of that destiny and invest in themselves and have a higher income, which you can have from a job also, but you can't have income, lifestyle, wealth, and equity from a job. And you said the word many times, it's all about freedom. And when you have income, lifestyle, wealth, and equity combined, you have freedom.
Terry, for people out there who are these are just little fun facts, and I hate to put you on the spot, but I want to ask you, approximately how many franchises do you think you've helped people to secure over the years? How many people do you think you've helped to get into a franchise? I mean, is it hundreds? Just to give a context to listeners, 35 years. How many people do you think have helped? How many people have you helped to buy a franchise and to get that time freedom they've been looking for?
Yeah. Well, with our process, our target is not, our goal is not to help someone buy a franchise, but the coaching gives them to a point of clarity where they can understand how to use a franchise as a vehicle to accomplish that income, lifestyle, wealth, and equity. But over those years, and especially since we franchised 22 years ago and really started to expand, and we now have 150 coaches nationwide, we're well over 10,000 individuals that we've helped go from employment to empowerment and achieve the 2.0 version of their careers. And that number is growing, even greater numbers on an annual basis as we expand our franchise system.
So what's the biggest challenge for people out there when it comes to buying a franchise? What's the biggest challenge that the average person faces when it comes to thinking about buying a franchise or actually buying a franchise? What's the biggest challenge?
Well, listen to the statistic, and I'll explain the challenge. 95% of our clients over the last 34 years have ended up investing in a franchise that they admittedly would have never, ever looked at on their own without the coaching, or had looked at it already and prematurely dismissed it and said no to it. 95%, because most people are trying to connect themselves to the business or the product or service. It's really about creating a possibilities approach of looking at things outside of what your 1.0 career was and your current perception criteria. Everybody has perception criteria or perception biases that we only look at certain things that we have some knowledge or understanding of.
Got it.
Our coaching methodology expands that education, awareness, and discovery, so you can use that knowledge base to be able to look at lots of different vehicles that can accomplish that for you. And that's really the key that holds most people back, is they think it's a needle in the haystack. They think it's about finding the perfect match or the perfect franchise or the only franchise that's right for me. And really, that couldn't be any further from the truth. Once you're using the business as a vehicle to understand how to build income, lifestyle, wealth, and equity, hundreds, if not thousands of different concepts could be the right vehicle for you once the coach helps you get into that mindset.
Terry, I got two final questions for you. You've had a lot of success. A lot of people out there listening have not had a lot of success. What is one thing that you do on a daily basis that most people don't do? Or what are a couple of things that you do on a daily basis that most people don't do that you think that has allowed you to have such a massive amount of success in your career?
Well, number one is something that we coach on, is that one of my biggest reasons for my success has been that I'm very possibilities driven and I'm very open to possibilities. And the other one is the key to the reason I built this business is that mentors back in my early days taught me that you always need to be adding value and creating value. And that's the reason I left the brokerage business, because we weren't adding or creating value. We were getting in the way of people that were going to buy a business anyway so we could add a commission. So it's always about adding more value and creating more value for our franchisees and for the clients that our franchise coaches work with. Those are the two things that are most important that's driven my success for 35 years.
Terry, final question. For anybody out there who says, you know what, I like this Terry Powell guy. I want to learn more. I want to talk to one of your coaches. I'm interested potentially in buying a franchise. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. I just want to start the conversation. What's the best way to get a hold of your team or to get a hold of you specifically?
Yeah, if you just go online to entrepreneurssource.com, or you can go to a platform we have called franchisematch.com. And either one of those will connect you with the opportunity to have a coach help you.
And as always, we like to end each and every show with a boom. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, boom.
Attend the world's best business workshop led by America's #1 business coach for free by subscribing on iTunes and leaving us an objective review. Claim your tickets by emailing us proof that you did it and your contact information to info@thrivetimeshow.com.